Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. It's that time of the week. It's time for the Security Token Show. You know what that means? All your favorite RWA news of the week. And man, what a lot of tokenization news this week. We're your hosts. I'm Herwig, joined, of course, by my co-host Kyle. How are you, Kyle? Looking nice in Miami over here.
Yeah, you know what? It's warm. It's sunny. I had a little Wi-Fi problem this morning, so I figured why not take it outside? And for all of our viewers who can't do that today, I send my regards.
And I'm one of them because I'm in New York this week. Yeah, that's right. Rub it in. It's cold. Looking forward to getting back to Miami. But well worth the trip to the Ondo Summit, I must say. So we will be getting into that on the show as well. We've got a great interview with MetaWealth and a whole lot of awesome news to talk about. So why don't we jump right into it? Before we do, please give us a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already and share the show when you get a chance. The love really means a lot. Now, run it, Jason. Thanks for that. And of course, it's the market movements, Kyle. So it's time to talk about the biggest things happening this week. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take 5 minutes here to just cover what I witnessed here this week in New York as what Ondo is calling Wall Street 2.0, a pivotal shift. We've seen a lot of big announcements from Ondo lately, actually. So we've got a lot of things to cover that we've been seeing trickling out ahead of the conference, and a major one that they announced at the conference, which is that they are now launching their own L1 called Ondo Chain. But for those of you who don't know Ondo, let me just give you a quick run through. You know, they entered onto the scene with their tokenized basically money market fund treasury equivalent products, right? OUSG and USDY. OUSG focused on institutions, bringing down the minimum to buy into such a product to $5,000, being multi-chain, one of the first products to go do that. And of course, USDY being their international sort of equivalent, which is the largest widely held yield coin, as we like to call the category as well. So good to see them sort of, start that category off with their yield coins, but they quickly moved on beyond just multi-chain and DeFi support. They launched Flux Finance to enable lending, essentially, and usage against your products there from Ondo. They announced recently their Nexus product, is basically them teaming up with all the other yield coins so that they can back into their liquidity. For, I believe, OUSG they mentioned, but presumably you're going to be able to sort of go in between what they said was Wellington, Fundbridge, Franklin Templeton, and Wisdom Tree, as well as, of course, the BlackRock partnership they already have with Biddle. So very interesting there. They also have their global Ondo Global Markets, Kyle. So this was a big deal. We were already speculating about what this would be, and I was actually right. Which is they are tokenizing stocks and bringing them to the international investor base, right? So if you're an American investor, you will not be able to go and use Ondo Global Markets. You probably can already go use Robinhood or E-Trade or whatever you're used to using to access public securities in the United States, but that's not possible for many, many international investors. And not to mention what isn't possible for many Americans that now Ondo is going to bring to international investors is all of this utility, right? Free transfers, just, being able to transfer USDY tokens, you'll be able to transfer with, say, tokenized Tesla, right? They'll be able to use them and stake them, and you'll be able to have transparency and all kinds of redemptions and instant minting capabilities. All of this is coming to Wall Street. That's why they call it Wall Street 2.0. And that's my gripe, Kyle. This is exactly why we need better regulation, because now you've got an American company bringing innovation to American securities that are only accessible by international investors and not by Americans. Isn't that kind of messed up?
Wow, that is pretty crazy, but it's interesting.
Not Ondo's fault.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anyway,
I don't know. It's I feel like so much of this is just like there's the regulatory capture and the arbitrage perspective that we're finally starting to unwind in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
what a wonderful event. I mean, it's tremendous.
Let me finish this diatribe, Kyle, with some insights, right? They actually brought together a great room, mostly a room heavily institutional, right? Because they are also working with Wall Street to make all of this happen. And ultimately, one, they said they needed their own blockchain in order to create true interoperability, or a bridge, let's say, between DeFi and Wall Street, right? These products. And ultimately, they want to tap into, I believe, liquidity in the same traditional manner, as well as, of course, being able to now leverage sort of the utility that tokenization brings. So this is a really neat construct. I haven't been able to dive into much deeper beyond what they've revealed here, other than it's very, very interesting. And they brought together, we heard from BlackRock, who talked about how, ultimately tokenization and crypto needs to be in one full portfolio view, right? And that's why ultimately they saw a value in Bitcoin ETP and things like that. We heard from all of the biggest players in sort of DeFi and crypto. We've heard from Uniswap, from Chainlink, from Mike Novogratz, from Dan Moorhead, from Pantera. We heard from regulators and ex-regulators across the board. And there was a surprise appearance from none other than Donald Trump Jr., and actually the World Liberty Financial team, talking a little bit about their outlook, of course, on the American, crypto industry and what his dad is doing to make it all better, as well as, of course, what the vision is for World Liberty Financial. So really a heck of an awesome day. Great content. Kyle, I heard 350,000 people tuned into the live stream on CoinDesk.
Wow.
That's an insane amount of people. So I believe it's all available to catch. There's a lot of good media interviews as well over on CoinDesk. But Ondo Summit, my hat off to you. Great job, Nathan, Justin, Ian, Katie, and the whole team that put this together. Absolutely awesome. Thanks for the invitation, and congratulations on all these announcements. That's a heck of an ecosystem they put together, Kyle. Any thoughts about all this?
Yeah, well, they deserve a lot of credit because we cover them on the show so often because their executional capacity has been really, really impressive over the last couple of years. They are constantly launching integrations with new blockchains, constantly launching new tokenized products, constantly driving the industry forward from executional capacity. I think that's really, really commendable in an industry where it's really hard to get off the ground. There's a lot of compliance issues. There's a ton of partnerships that don't necessarily drive any real adoption. Ondo has been everything in the opposite. They have really, really done a great job of that. So major shout out to Ondo for putting the event together and for driving the industry forward.
You love to see it, Kyle. We also had a lot more news happening this week. It wasn't just Ondo making waves, right?
That's right. So kicking it into our actual headlines here from the show, there was an announcement from tZERO. And so a familiar face in the tokenized industry, tZERO is a licensed alternative trading system or security token, quote unquote, exchange here in the United States that allows for people to trade their tokenized securities. And they did announce that they were doing a full tokenization of their security, the TZROP token. And so anybody that doesn't know what this means, it's understandable. This is slightly confusing language because it is a tokenized security already, or we've always considered it a security token. But now they are taking the steps, I think, to actually bring a lot of the ledger on chain using their own special purpose broker dealer. This is something they weren't able to do before because the previous, vendors that they worked with weren't able to receive that digital ledger as the main source of truth. I think, as I understand now, that's a big component here. It also allows them to bring all kinds of utility into the token, including on-chain KYC identification and other things, which I think is going to be an interesting rollout. There was some kind of rumors of other things that may be happening with this token that we haven't seen yet. But I think that at least bringing it fully on-chain and executing that themselves is a good next step as they work to list other issuers to do the same.
Yeah, it's not quite clear, right, from the language from the press release, just exactly what we're going to get out of it, but there's definitely some good hints. And we already know from their SPBD license that, right, custody is a big opportunity for them now. So they mentioned a custodial wallet perhaps tied to your account and other things. This makes sense. How it impacts the tokenization of tZEROP. That's a little bit more where I get a little lost, but I'm happy to see more features and more things roll out behind that token, because this is one of those examples, Kyle, that you don't need to have necessarily a governance token that has a separate function and a native token. You can offer equity that has utility that goes beyond just offering revenue or profit, I think in this case, but it actually can offer you benefits. In this case, maybe on the tZERO platform, and beyond. Who knows what they end up rolling out. I think that's what's cool about all of it. So nice to see the renewed focus around it, Kyle. I will say that.
So that's coming March 2025. So presumably that rollout will happen over the next month or two as they transition to that fully tokenized offering. So that's a big news from tZERO. Shout out to them for being such a long stalwart in the industry and not giving up steam.
Well, I got some more news on that front because we've got funds going, Jane. Actually, Libre Capital, they announced, I believe last year on Solana, several products. And now they're going to SUI, SUI, right? So they're expanding. This is the classic trend we've been talking about the fact that these are going to be multi-chain assets. But I'm also seeing here that they got the Laser Carry Fund from Nomura Digital coming to SUI, which is very, very cool. Just to see, again, more institutional adoption, Kyle. I think these are very institutional products. I don't believe they're available to retail, but it's interesting that they are bringing them to the different chains. So that means there's not just retail activity, but institutional activity on different chains that I think that they're trying to reach here with Libre Capital, right? Is that right? And Nomura, is that fair to say, Kyle?
It definitely feels like it's a benefit to both sides, right? If you're tokenizing a fund, liquidity is still one of those things that you're trying to figure out. And so having more opportunities to plug into different blockchain solutions that may have new sources of buy-side demand or more demand for yield is going to be something that's super important. So I think that makes a ton of sense. And on the SUI side, they've obviously been the Solana of this cycle in terms of really successful layer one blockchains that have done and overperformed the market. And so for them, they also want to bring institutional adoption onto their blockchain to service their existing customer base. They don't want to just have a huge blockchain that nobody uses, right? And so I think that it definitely solves the need on both sides of the equation here. And I'm excited to see, the real, what the yield payout is here, or how these products are accessible and what it actually turns out for investors as this product launches soon.
There's other asset managers involved too. They're saying private credit, as well as hedge funds and money market funds, aka yield coins, are coming down the pipeline, Kyle. So it's great to see.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you were at Ondo, and they talked about private credit in this one. We've seen the private credit market obviously is huge in TradFi. Did you hear anything about that at Ondo? Is that kind of a growing interest in the security token space from your perspective, or is it just a lot of press releases on that front still?
No, I think it's a little bit of press release action as well. Obviously, the Apollo news is huge coming into the space. Yeah, I don't know what their fund was, if it was private credit or not, but I think private credit just in general is one of those. I think it was. It's called ACRED, so I'm pretty sure it's a private credit fund. But that, the reality is that's a huge need. And I think there is an opportunity as people look for more yield, right? As we get comfortable with yield coins and we start to say, hey, give me something riskier, give me something with different exposure to a different, asset class below it, for exposure purposes. I think that's absolutely coming. So private credit is growing. I think you're going to see more headlines, like you said, Kyle, but it's not quite ready for that. So,
right.
I think you're going to see some activity, but I don't think you're going to see it blow up the way in terms of actual usage, right? When we saw Tradable bring on 1.7 billion in private credit, et cetera. To answer your question about Ondo, though, because Ondo's not quite doing something in that front yet, just on the tokenized stocks and the yield coins. It wasn't necessarily like a big, topic that was talked about.
Interesting stuff. So to keep the show rolling here, Herwig, DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Commission, just made an announcement that their tokenization stack has now been officially aligned, packaged, and rebranded. They acquired Securency, which is a company that did a lot of token issuance. Now DTCC announces that the product suite that formerly was known as the Securency product suite is now known as Composer X. And this involves their capital markets platform, which is the lifecycle management process for the token that's onboarding the asset, managing the cap table, that type of a thing. They also have Composer X Factory, which is the tokenization engine that's actually creating the tokens and the smart contracts themselves on the actual technical side. And then they do have the Composer X Ledger Scan, which is the, data platform, secondary market kind of feeds style stuff on the block explorers to track how the ecosystem is moving and changing. And those three things create the Composer X suite for the DTCC. So, this is all inside of the compliance-aware token framework, which is their own patented technology, powering their offerings. And they certainly, according to the press release, are covering everywhere from New York to Europe to Asia and into the Middle East. So they really do cover the map here with their Composer X token suite.
It's the DTCC. They clear quadrillions a year around the world, folks. So I actually think this is a pretty big deal. It does go to show you how long it takes for TradFi to implement things, right? They acquired Securency back in October of 2023. So, it goes to show you just how long it took them to kind of say, okay, let's evaluate, what we just purchased here and repackage it into Composer X and roll it out into the market over a year, almost a year and a half. So that's just sort of to be expected also, honestly. And I think great timing. The interesting thing to see here is just how competitive it will be against now the suite of many competitive solutions from Goldman Sachs, from JPM, from Citibank, from everybody else that's getting into the tokenization game from the sort of financial incumbent side of things. So I'll be really interested to see kind of what kind of clients they take on and just how much of an edge they might have, Kyle, with Composer X being part of DTCC as opposed to just going to, say, a traditional bank or asset manager for whatever solution they might be using or offering.
It's a good point. Well, the quadrillions part definitely is a pretty big edge in the traditional business model versus some of the competitors. We'll see how that liquidity can be layered in here to provide a real competitive advantage, whether that's from a float perspective, whether that's from just an internal treasury being able to underwrite or subscribe these deals themselves perspective, or whether that's potentially being able to leverage some of the clients that they do work with in the TradFi space to get those lines of credit or revolvers or underwriting from some of these companies kind of as a quid pro quo style of thing. There's many avenues of which this could potentially be a huge competitive advantage for them. So excited to see how this evolves over time.
Well, for anyone who is speculating or thought that this acquisition was just more of a PR puffer piece, clearly it is not. It is now translated into commercial services, and I'm excited to see how they get taken advantage of and who their first sort of clients end up being, Kyle. It's definitely a market movement. But what another one is some commodities coming on, Shane. I know it's one of your favorite topics. In this case, We're talking about gold and diamonds. All right. So gold by none other than UBS, Swiss banking giant. So
makes sense. On brand.
It's on brand that they would tokenize. Worth mentioning, they put it on ZK Sync. It's an Ethereum layer 2, focused obviously on zero knowledge proofs and privacy and other things. I think what gives them an edge potentially with some institutional clients, maybe what got them to win over UBS in this case. And then there's also Swisstronic, which I believe is also out of Switzerland. It's in the name. And tokenizing with a partner out of Switzerland as well to tokenize both diamonds as well as create an exchange for them, Kyle. That they'll be bringing them, rolling that out as well. So seems to be pretty legitimate. Love seeing that happen. Little commodities on.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know that so much of the so much of the commodities market gets traded in perpetuals and in futures contracts and kind of synthetic markers of the ownership of the actual underlying. And so tracking the supply chain and being able to locate where the actual underlying is a huge benefit on top of the trading perspective. I mean, I was just talking with my team last week about like the Bank of London has like run out of gold. Like they don't know where the gold is for a lot of the transactions that they've been doing. And so it's less about them being broke and more about them not knowing where it is, right? And so this is a real problem with, especially when you're dealing with tons or hundreds of tons of gold, right? Where you can't just like leave that in a storage locker somewhere, right? So there's a lot of these types of things as these assets get moved from country to country, and you've got all kinds of checkpoints and middlemen and fees and all these things layered in together. The blockchain really benefits a lot with respect to these things because you can cut out many of these processes, or at least provide transparency to everyone along the supply chain, what's going on, what phase you're in, how long things are going to take, and a lot of this stuff. So I think that from all those reasons, commodities just make so much sense. And then you just layer on, the fact that they have way less compliance, from a financial perspective than a security, for example, which, presents, I think, a strong use case to drive liquidity into the securities space by kind of bringing some of these other more familiar assets on chain as well.
Heard yesterday from the acting chair and a commissioner from the CFTC, as well as previous commissioners of the CFTC. And I can tell you they have the right attitude when it comes to commodities, focused on creating a taxonomy so we can classify tokens and figure out what stuff needs to be governed by the SEC and what they can continue to govern under their commodities framework. So very, very
absolutely.
Stuff. Totally with you on that one.
To wrap it up, Herwig, I wanted to give you some props because we do every year we do predictions and we call out where we see the market heading. And for such a long time now, Herwig, you have said that you see in the future that regulators would require tokenization technology to be used for issuers in order to maintain transparency, to uphold compliance, and to integrate with the existing network. And it looks like we may be seeing just that with our final headline here in the market movements section, which is that the Thailand SEC is launching their on-chain marketplace and blockchain solution for tokenized securities, with the quote being the SEC in Thailand is leveraging technology to enhance efficiency in capital markets by promoting an electronic securities ecosystem, and that new regulations will be launched to facilitate the issuance of electronic securities and online purchases of debentures, including medium to long-term debt instruments used by companies to borrow money. So Thailand is all in on tokenization of real-world assets. You were spot on, as always. And so what are your thoughts on this?
I appreciate the commendation there. It is honestly this year, a little bit of last year, but I think a lot of this year, we're going to see a lot of it. All of our predictions that we've been talking about for over 5 years on this show, we're about to be doing a lot of cashing in. I think we're about to be doing a lot of cashing in. We're going to be right about a lot of things. Wrong about
Call me Cassandra, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So no, this is to me inevitable, and it's not quite the SEC that I wanted to see this happen, but good for the Thailand SEC to show the example to the SEC here in the United States how it could look like. And I think other governments are going to follow suit, and that'll put pressure and encouragement on the SEC stateside to consider something like that here. I don't know if we need a rolled out version like the Thailand SEC is doing. I have to do a little bit more research exactly how that's going to operate, right? But the idea that we can have a clear regulatory clarity around moving securities on a blockchain is huge news. Whether that has to somehow feed into a transparency layer that the SEC has Overwatch for, great. Maybe they can just simply or track, existing blockchains. This is why actually some people make an argument why public blockchains are important versus private blockchains, because at least with a public blockchain, the SEC will always be able to track, what's going on. Private offers complications and opportunity for bad situations. So it's a very interesting approach, Kyle. And I think more and more governments will follow suit in endorsing something similar to this path, because it is a boon. It's a benefit. Of course, it makes a perfect digital trail that the SEC can even monitor programmatically and digitally. Like, this is the future of how they're going to want to do
with no new manpower too, right? Like, they don't have to load up with more people.
What a win for them.
Yeah,
it's on a platter. So anyway, glad you ended on that one. That's another big market movement, because it will be a trend that is set, I think. And with that, Kyle, that's the market movements. We've got an awesome interview with MetaWealth. So don't go anywhere, everybody. Let's jump right into that.
Welcome, everyone, to another Security Token Show interview. This week, we have Michael Topolinski from MetaWealth. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing great. Very, very excited. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. For context, everyone watching, we have had a MetaWealth in the Security Token Show in the past, sharing different updates, and we have more updates here this time around. So why don't we start with the big one? Tell us about what you're doing in tokenized real estate with your platform, and maybe some of the bigger new numbers that are coming across your platform.
Yeah, so for us, we've had a really exciting start to 2025. We just recently closed our first real estate investment from Rome. It was an investment in 10 luxury apartments from a project called 40 Living with a very large developer in the area. And we just are launching today our second investment from Rome in 15 premium apartments from the same developer in a different project called Porta Pamphili. But the biggest thing for us in terms of updates and improvements that we made is in December of last year, we were able to improve our product offering to create an option to onboard both TradFi and DeFi investors, and to provide exposure to both the traditional markets and to the blockchain markets. And with this structure, we were able to bring on our first institutional client that invested with us. So we have a lot of really exciting things going on, and it's been a very, very, very exciting start to the year for us.
That is fantastic. Congratulations. Always the hardest to get your first institutional. So, excited to see the other ones to flow. And I know you can't share much on who they are and whatnot, but what do you anticipate their participation level being? Do you anticipate them, investing more, or maybe allocating their own assets that they may want to tokenize? What would that relationship look like?
Yeah, so in terms of this investor, they have invested in our first real estate investment from Rome, 40 Living, to a total of 1.4 million euros. And they have further commitments with us up to a total value of 3 million euro, which would be placed in subsequent investments coming forward. We will see how it progresses from there with them specifically. But the big thing for us is that with the new product structure that we have, with the new product offering that we have seen an incredible growth in institutional interest in our products and in our investments. And we're anticipating some further updates through Q1 and through the remainder of the year, which will be very significant on the institutional side of things. So this is the first of what we expect to be many institutions to be investing with MetaWealth.
That is fantastic. And you mentioned that it's based on the structure, right, that you guys are kind of implementing here. I do want to touch on that. My understanding is it's a combination between TradFi and that you guys are putting together. Tell us a bit more about what that structure is and why the institutions care about this structure versus a normal, piece of equity into a piece of real estate.
Yeah, so for us, we launched our initial investment in our product in April of 2023. And through April of 2023 until December of last year, the product that we were offering was simply tokens. So tokens that were registered on either the Ethereum blockchain at the beginning or Solana blockchain. And with the platform that we built and our investment philosophy, we approached a lot of institutions throughout this process. And they liked the concept of the way that we were going about real estate investing. They liked the value propositions of creating increased accessibility for a wider range of customer personas to enable cross-border investing very easily and to increase liquidity surrounding these investments. However, some of the traditional institutions that we spoke with, they are taking a very step-by-step approach in adopting blockchain technology, adopting tokens, and getting exposure to the blockchain technology. Although it is very clear in our conversations that there is a lot of due diligence being done, there is a lot of belief that blockchain will be a major component of the future of traditional finance as well, not only decentralized finance. But with us, what we did to enable institutional investors to invest with MetaWealth, to join our platform, is we created a structure where with our real estate investments, we tokenize them, we offer tokens, but at the same time for traditional investors, we offer bonds that are issued from the securitized vehicle that we use as a holding company for these real estate investments and assets. And so our institutional investors that joined the platform today are still having exposure to the market that they're comfortable with, that they know, and to products that they have already done transactions with and are comfortable with, while step-by-step adopting the blockchain Web3 token product offering we have. So we quickly learned through our process that with institutions, you have to provide something that they can understand, that they can adopt today, that they can pass through their compliance regulatory departments, and basically that they're comfortable with, while giving them the opportunity to gain that exposure to Web3, blockchain, and tokens in a very comfortable way for them.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? You want to be able to mitigate some of the risks there, but also kind of speak their language. And I think this is going to be the beginning of structured products on chain, and getting more complex. Which, of course, because of the composability of the smart contracts, you can, essentially strategies, right, for people to invest into. Especially the more that the actual RWAs themselves come on chain, then the structured product around it is also tokenized. I'm very, very excited for that. So. Cool to see that you guys are working on this. In terms of reception, how many institutions have you guys talked to, or what conversations are you guys having in terms of this is something that's going to definitely bring in more allocations, or is it still maybe in testing phase? What's the feedback look like?
The feedback is very, very strong. So for us, we've been talking to institutions now for over a year, really starting from the end of 2023. We started to approach institutions with our investments. We do anticipate a lot of significant adoption. Our targets for this year, based off of this new product structure, are significant growth. Is significant growth. We're expecting for us to be able to grow our the assets that are closed and investment capital placed with MetaWealth by 300% this year. That's our anticipation, based off of the conversations largely that we're having with institutions. We do have an expectation to bring on some very, very large global financial institutions. I can't go into specifics on specific deals, but what I can tell you is that right now we have a lot of active opportunities on the table, and I'm expecting to come back to the STM team very, very shortly with some more exciting news about institutional players that have invested with MetaWealth.
That's fantastic. So we've covered in the past, right, that you had multiple properties come on chain, multiple assets. We've also seen now your first institutional, participant here probably more in your pipeline. I'm curious also from an infrastructure standpoint, what else can we expect from MetaWealth either this year, next year, sometime soon? But what else are you guys building? Because obviously it's great to have institutions come on, but we're also susceptible to, how much can we build around an ecosystem to support these assets and make it, more incentivizing for people to want to allocate. So what else are you guys building? What are you guys working on?
Yeah, so that's actually the ecosystem and the product development we have on the ecosystem side of things is the thing that I'm the most excited about for this year. We have very ambitious goals. We're very close to launching some big product developments. The big thing is that on the blockchain within the decentralized finance component of our infrastructure, we plan to be rolling out some product development that will enable our users to leverage their tokens, their asset tokens, so the tokens associated with the real estate for different things such as staking, collateral, trading, obviously, and a few different things. So we're expecting that by the end of Q1 and through Q2 that we'll be able to come back to you guys with some really exciting updates on what our investors are going to be able to do with their assets to further leverage them for more profits. And essentially with the RWA community and whatnot, we are building out a marketplace that we're approaching different RWA projects about, and we are trying to create a community within this marketplace to provide even greater access to a variety of different asset classes as well. So it's a very, very exciting time for the product development, for the ecosystem as well, and for me personally, it's the most exciting part of what we're doing. The institutional side and bringing on institutions is a huge milestone for us. It presents a fantastic opportunity for us to scale the business significantly this year. But the ecosystem is something that's going to be ecosystem development is something that's going to be extremely beneficial to our investors and potentially to other investors that have participated with other RWA products as well.
100%. The token is as good as the utility it has as well, right? So aside from the underlying, of course, but utility is really what's going to drive this forward. So I'm glad that you guys are building that. Obviously, we're going to keep an eye out. We want to be able to report on that. So everyone watching, definitely keep on the show. And of course, it's also live, obviously, on STM. We'll have the MetaWealth properties as well. With that, Michael, before I let you go, I do have to ask, we're at $50 billion in RWAs right now, market cap. Where do you think we're going to end 2025 at?
I think that I think that first off, the administration in the U.S. is the stance that they're taking is going to have a massive impact with some of the things that are being proposed and promoted by different people associated with the administration in unofficial and official capacities. They're really going to be a huge driver in terms of where it goes. It's hard to predict, but I do expect very significant growth throughout the year. It's something they have to follow day by day to really keep up with all the news of what's going on. But we're expecting very, very significant growth this year overall for the entire space.
So no dollar figure I can put you at?
My actual estimation is that we'll see at least a 3x growth with the market cap of RWA this year. There is potential for more, especially with some of the things that are coming out of the administration within the United States. We're following it day by day. The news is coming out day by day. And overall, with some of the regulatory things that are happening in different jurisdictions as well, we're expecting at least a 3x growth, but we'll see what comes. It could be greater, right? That's the big thing there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of things being promoted and proposed right now. And I think it's going to be more of a month-by-month conversation than just a prediction at the beginning of this year. I think there's going to be a lot of growth, and we just have to keep on top of it every single day.
I mean, just from the beginning of January to today, right? Enough has happened that obviously changes how people approach their strategies, how institutions are looking at things with certain announcements. So, very, very excited. 3x growth. Let's see if we hit that or even more. But with that,
Yes.
Michael, thank you for joining us. Everyone, you can share this to anyone you think it's applicable to. But otherwise, we will be going on to the next section of the show.
Thank you, Jason.
This week was an awesome week for the RWA Foundation, specifically behind the scenes, man. There's so much I want to share about our new crypto initiative to bring together the RWA industry, bridge RWAs to DeFi, and of course, build the largest community of crypto natives focused on RWA. So if you haven't tapped into the RWA Foundation yet, make sure that you do. Our white paper is out and live on our website. You can also follow us on X and tap into our Telegram with hundreds of trunkies, part of the herd, all RWA crypto natives. We have lots of awesome discussions in there. In the meantime, we're hoping to announce some awesome working groups soon about how we're going to be helping the RWA industry with our partners, that you can all see on our website once again. And of course, we've released our roadmap. So we're fully focused on getting that token launch rollout properly executed. And of course, continuing to, execute on a lot of the initiatives that we've put out in our white paper. So right now is a lot of co-creating, building up our community, a lot of people collaborating. So come join in. It's a lot of fun. It's a great time to be in RWAs. And that's the update for this week. Catch you again next week. Let's move on with the show.
All right, Herwig. This was an absolute banger of an episode with you and I both slightly remote from our typical workplaces, and I'd say we still made it happen pretty damn good.
I think so, Kyle. It worked out. Not too many Wi-Fi. I'm just kidding. I'm still here, everybody. Did we lose Kyle? Just kidding. You got me. Well, it's time for the favorite part of the show, Kyle. We have a hard task because after such an amazing episode of news, we got to pick a company each that we thought made the biggest moves in the space. They deserve our spotlight, the Kyle bump, the happy bump. It's going to send them places. And it's a pretty big deal in my opinion. So Kyle, without further ado, I'd love to hear who you are choosing for your company of the week.
Well, Mr. Herwig, happy Konings. I have to say that I like what I like, whether it's pizza, chicken parm. Sometimes I just want to eat the same thing every day. And you know what? I'm going to be happy about it. Breakfast sandwiches. It is what it is, right? And in this case, I love commodities. I just really do. It's a great market. It's a huge opportunity. I think it's still something that has been underserved. And I do see it as a new potential gateway to driving liquidity into the security token space. We see how stablecoins have brought immense liquidity. We see how commodities have really strong liquidity in the market. And I think that that's been an awesome opportunity. I've spent a lot of my time focused on it. And I'm excited to give my award to UBS for tokenizing gold, for bringing this stuff on chain. Obviously, this is a huge company, and I like to try to give my awards to the smaller companies that are really nimble, making moves, big shout outs. But in this case, UBS, obviously this is a natural fit, as we joked about in the market movement section. This is brand aligned with them. They do a ton of gold and commodity storage in Switzerland. They are now working with ZK Sync to do it in a anonymous or pseudo anonymous way, which obviously is also on brand with the whole Swiss banking thing. But bringing gold on chain makes so much sense on the supply chain perspective. And there is a big arbitrage window right now in tokenized gold. So bringing in some of these big players to drive more liquidity into the space and help that opportunity close, so that we can bring more and more buy-side demand, I think is huge, and we need some of these players to provide validation in the space. So for all of those reasons, Herwig, UBS is my winner this week.
Kyle, that's a fantastic choice. Definitely no small company. It's the biggest bank in Switzerland, but that's why this is such a great use case and why it's such a great opportunity. It's proof that tokenization, and specifically tokenization of gold, is the future. I'm excited to keep tabs on this product success, Kyle, however possible it may be, trying to get that news.
Absolutely. So I want to know, Herwig, who's your winner?
Well, Kyle, I got to say, I was well taken care of. I did not get one of the goodie bags on the way out. Apparently there were some, but I was busy chatting to people, closing it out. That's what happens. But it was such a great time at the Ondo Summit. They announced an incredible ecosystem and infrastructure, one that is, I actually do believe, revolutionary for Wall Street. I'm very curious to get, beneath the hood, as they say, right? But it seems like they've done all the right, work and building and putting the right pieces in place in order to be able to truly bring Wall Street liquidity and products to the world in an on-chain manner and to DeFi. And that's a huge deal, Kyle. And so that's why Ondo is my company of the week.
That's a great win. Makes total sense. Major shout out to them for throwing a fantastic industry adoption and awareness event, teaching the Wall Street bankers and institutional guys of the world that don't have time to read crypto Twitter all day, or maybe they do on the side. Shout out to Ondo for putting that event together and really driving institutional adoption for the industry.
Well, congratulations to both our winners, UBS and Ondo, for making our companies of the week, and to the rest of the space for bringing it forward and tokenizing the world. In the meantime, while you wait for our next episode next Friday, go to stm.co, check out the latest news. We've got billions and billions of bonds, equities, real estate. We're over 50 billion, folks. There are so many people who are predicting 50 billion by the end of the year. We're already at 50 billion. It's going to be way, 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 way bigger. And we've got it all over there, as well as some great research reports. We just came out with our own prediction for 2030, Kyle, between 30 to 50 trillion by 2030. If you don't believe us, go read our report before you start debating us. And then let's have a healthy conversation. But with that, Kyle, any closing thoughts?
Hey, from Miami, Florida here to New York, where you are now, Herwig. Really appreciate everybody that tunes in to listen. Shout out to Jason behind the scenes who put it all together and hosted a great interview today with MetaWealth. And we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Well, with that, everybody, happy tokenizing.